Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Chung, and for today's video, I'd like to review my Maisto McLaren F1. I've always wanted a model of the McLaren F1, probably because of the reputation it holds as the world's fastest car for 15 years. I mean, the legacy and importance this car holds in supercar history is so great that not having this car was not an option for me. There are several brand options for a McLaren F1 model. You could get it in Auto Art, Mini Champs, UT, Maisto, or even Gilloy. But I didn't want to pay over $150 for a single model, which is why I settled for this Maisto, which cost me 28,000 Korean won, which is about 26 to 27 US dollars. So Maisto has made this car in 18 and 24 scale, and my friend over at Imperial Diecast has made a review on the 24 scale version, so make sure to watch that video as well. And you actually have quite a few color options for this McLaren F1. You can either get it in silver, gray, dark green, dark blue, red, and there is even a very rare chrome version of this car. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, here's the front of the model. First, the headlamps. They are surprisingly well made. Usually, lower budget models have huge pegs um, on the headlamps, which gives it a very unrealistic view. But this one, the pegs are moved over to the side. Um, Unfortunately, however, the bulbs inside it are painted on without and not they didn't use a separate piece for it. However, it does look pretty nice in my opinion. The same cannot be said, however, for the turn signals right below the headlamps. They are just painted on, which is not too uncommon for a Maisto diecast, but in my opinion, this is what ultimately made the model nothing more than a low budget car. It's completely unrealistic, and while I do understand painting on small turn signals and side indicators, I really wish they'd used a separate part instead of just um, painting this on. So usually Maisto cars have opening trunk and hood and opening front doors, but for this model doesn't offer an opening trunk, and I guess this could be a drawback for some people. On the bright side, though, there isn't a gap between the trunk and the body of the car since the trunk doesn't open. Although, if that's what you want, you should get a resin model instead. The McLaren logo used to be down here, and you can probably guess the quality of the logo by the fact that it has fallen off. So it was just a cheap sticker, and when you wipe the surface of the car to get rid of the dust, it usually tears off. The air intake up here is not too bad. Um, Usually on these cheaper diecast cars, they're really rough and have bits of paint on them, but this one's quite nicely made, and although it is not perfectly straight, um, it is not too seriously eye-catching. And here's the thing I told you about opening parts and the gaps. You can see there's a huge gap between the door and the body right here. On to the side, one thing I really don't like about this Maisto McLaren F1 is the huge wheelhouse on the front. The rear is quite well made, yes, but there's too much space left on the front, and it looks really weird, especially if the wheel is at an angle. There's too much space uh, left at the wheelhouse. There are another huge there is another huge gap for the door hinges over here. another common trait you can find on cheaper diecast cars. And the rims are pretty well made actually. I love um, how they did the hubcaps down here, but unfortunately, this car doesn't have any disc brakes down here. So Maisto usually does disc brakes, which is something I've always liked about Maisto cars, but unfortunately, that does not apply to this car. Vents down here aren't perfectly straight. You can see um, it's not perfectly straight, but it's not too eye-catching since it's off to the side right here. And luckily, we have windows. Um, Windows on the doors here. That stops the dust from getting into the interior. So most cheaper cars do not have windows, but for this car, we have windows right here. Here is the unique interior of the McLaren F1. The McLaren F1 is probably one of the only road cars that offer a three-seat layout with the driver's seat in the middle. So it's supposed to give the driver a better view of the road, just like Le Mans cars or Formula One cars. But apparently, it wasn't very suitable for a road car, especially when changing lanes, which is why we haven't seen all that many newer cars with a three-seat layout. Even newer McLarens don't have three-seat layouts. As for the model, the interior is quite disappointing, even for a Maisto car. So I know that the McLaren F1 doesn't have the fanciest interior, but it is pretty disappointing. And the steering wheel is absolutely horrible. It looks like it came out of a smaller scale toy. It doesn't look like a model at all, and there isn't any kind of detail um, in the interior. So the overall interior gives a very plastic look, and especially the seats and driver's seats, which is in red, looks like it has just been freshly painted. It looks very uh, the finishing on the seat is very bad, let's say. Here is the rear of the car. The rear is quite well made actually. They did a great job with the rear lamps right here. They hit the pegs pretty well, and the grills, which are unlike most Maisto cars, which use a single piece of blocked plastic, it is open, and you can even see the engine from here. Mufflers are done beautifully. Usually, cheaper cars have block mufflers, but this one, it's all open, and it is even finished nicely, although the chrome used tends to wear and scratch off. The F1 logo over here is made out of cheap sticker, which gives you an idea of how the McLaren logo at the front of the car used to look like. Here is the engine room. The hood is very weak, and it's made out of plastic, so uh, you have to be especially careful with that. You can't really get a full view of the engine. Some of it is hidden underneath this piece of plastic here, but from what we can see, it's done quite nicely. The chrome looks a little bit flashy and maybe a little bit cheap, but other than that, um, the engine room is very nice for a car in this price range. So there is even a spoiler feature, which is quite amusing for this car. Unlike most Maisto cars, the undercarriage is quite simple. There's no chrome pipes or complicated detail down here, which I guess is a practical choice. So one thing I'd like to point out for these reviews with these cheap cars, please don't think that I'm being too harsh on them. I know the cars are good as what we pay for. It's obvious Maisto cars are worse than Ottawa cars. They cost 8 times less. The purpose of this review is to show you what you have to put up with for getting a bargain on the price, and then determining whether this car is enough or it's better to pay for a more higher end version of it. From that viewpoint, while I really love the McLaren F1 and I'm really happy to have it, I am quite reluctant to recommend this car to any collector, even those with a tighter budget. Possibly because there are so many drawbacks on this car, but most importantly, there is an UT variant which looks a lot better for a slightly expensive price. It's not that Maistos are more common and easier to find or anything. This model is actually very old and it's probably just as rare or even more rare than the UT version. So that's it. I'd like to thank you all for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please click like and subscribe. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. Tell me what I should work on my next video. And I'll see you guys later then.